I got to celebrate my 51st birthday last week. Thank you to my friends, family, and online community for all your wonderful wishes. This year's birthday had an extra dose of wonderful because it was also Mother's Day. I got to celebrate life and being a mother all in one. Turning half a century young, as I like to say, is a massive milestone. Usually by this point, many of you may be empty nesters. For some of us, our children have reached a level of independence that requires less of our time. So we begin to wonder what life is about now that our children need so much less of us. That morning, I woke up excited for my birthday. Birthdays have always been a big thing for me. But on this particular birthday, I had a lot of time for deep thinking, and this is what prompted me to make this video for you, because I wanted to address something that I believe many can relate to, the fear that comes with growing older. I'm not going to deny that there's a dread that comes with crossing the 50-yard line, but there's also a lot of grace. So my only objective here in sharing this lesson or this little piece of wisdom is to give you a call of action, especially to those of you who are about to or have crossed over the 50-yard line, not to fear it, but to embrace it. For some people, especially women, being 50 is accompanied by fear and uncertainty. Although we are living much longer lives, 50 is the threshold in which one begins to reflect upon life and all that it entails. 50 is often the stage in which our insecurities get magnified and we begin to feel the fear of aging. For some people, birthdays are not celebrations, but they are a yearly, dreadful reminder of what they fear most, aging. My mother dreaded every birthday. When she turned 50, she was depressed. She even cried. And I couldn't relate to it. She met that part of her life with such resistance. She said, I now have less years in front of me than behind me, as if she knew something that I didn't. And I remember thinking, is turning 50 that horrible? Fear of aging had always been her number one thing that she dreaded the most, because she has spent her whole life looking after her skin and her appearance. But now that I'm here, I can relate. It is true. As soon as we cross that 50-yard line, we become more mindful of wrinkles and white hairs showing. And I was just guilty of that the other day. Driving to dinner to celebrate with my children and my ex-husband, I began to stare at a picture that they had just taken of me moments ago. And I zoomed into the picture, and the critic in me began. Oh my God, I see so many wrinkles. How many of you are guilty of that? We tear ourselves apart and we are so unkind and critical. Or we look at pictures from previous years and we long to look and feel like the way we did, appreciating everything that we are today. My ex-husband quickly reminded me to stay on my grateful zone. When you're in your 70s and 80s, he said, you will look at that same picture and you will long to look the way you look now. Such truth in those words. Yes, you're right, I said, as I kept staring at that picture. And every wrinkle had a place. And suddenly, instead of just focusing on the negative, I saw the beautiful woman, the mother, the warrior, the fighter, the survivor, the lover, the writer, the friend, the teacher, and the wisdom bearer in me. We can choose how we're going to react to what happens to us. We can celebrate growing older as the privilege that it is, or we can dread it as a life sentence. There is something graceful about entering the 50+ yard line. If you let it and you don't shame your ears, it can be an empowering turning point in which we become comfortable in our own skin. We care less about looks and opt instead for comfort. It is a stage in which we recognize that we have paid our dues and we start to let our voice be heard. We become braver and embrace living without apology and authentically. We seek real connections that actually matter. We declutter the mess in our lives. And we finally begin to believe in our strength, our wisdom, and power. As I laid in bed that night, I had time for introspecting about aging and why such is met with such fear and resistance. So many stages of my life flashed before me. I saw myself in my 20s and 30s, that young, vibrant, beautiful, super fit girl. But that was also my masquerade stage. You see, I didn't know who I was. Perhaps because I didn't even like who I was. But instead of spending the time to discover myself, I opted for an easier option. So I began to try all kinds of masks, and I wore them long enough that I truthfully forgot who I actually was underneath them. I got so good at being anyone other than myself. I was quite the chameleon, molding myself to whatever I thought others wanted me to be in order to, obtain their approval and affection. And yes, then my mind wandered into my 40s. Yep, that was a highly vain stage for me of beauty, physical appearance, self-indulgence, but also a lot of fear. You could say that stage was my armor and egocentric stage. I suited up to protect myself from anything that could hurt me. And I became really good at hiding behind the thickest of shields, never allowing myself to fully trust, belong, or loved. During this stage, my biggest project was looking great naked in front of the mirror and to seek happiness at whatever the cost. Unfortunately, both desires were driven by societal programming that tells us that in order to look great, one has to be skin and bones, and that happiness is something to be acquired externally. Well, you could imagine how much I struggled and failed at both. This is the stage in which I suffered the most, destroyed myself the most, and hated myself the most. But lying in bed that night on May the 8th, thinking about the wonderful day that I had with my family and feeling like I was the most fortunate woman in the world to have been gifted the beautiful life that I have, I realized that all those stages that I often want to forget and erase were my stepping stones to feeling this complete. It was those stages of struggle and hurt and pain and disappointment that led me to my rebirth stage. Life after 50 for me has been my healing stage. my time of self-discovery and enlightenment in a lot of ways. And now I feel that I have returned full circle into the woman that I was supposed to be. I've discovered who I am, and I am learning to love the person that I found. So this video is for you. It's in celebration of growing old with grace and the hope for what lies ahead. I believe that when we live our life to the fullest, with no regrets, making repairs, owning our shit, and celebrating the highs and the lows, when we can live our life from that grateful place, then growing old should not be something that we should fear, because we know that we're living a life well lived. Life after 50 sets the stage for something powerful in each of us. Becoming older doesn't need to be scary. Our 50s mark the age of wisdom. It is a stage in which we finally are at peace with who we are and what we stand for. To me, life after 50 is about being brave to live life without shame or guilt, without having to compromise any part of ourselves in order to be loved or accepted. It's about being comfortable with the discomfort of not knowing where life is taking us, and yet excited about the prospect for adventure ahead. It is about accepting that, yeah, we are going to disappoint some people along the way, because we don't share their opinions and beliefs, and about being brave to even risk losing some of those connections because we love and believed differently. So this video is for you. This is our time to embrace our sexuality with the maturity and the grace that can only come from the experience of a person who has loved and suffered deeply. Trust your intuition. Set the boundaries that perhaps you were afraid to set in the past, and know that this is your time. This is your time to be vulnerable, to be seen, to stare at fear in the eye, but still leap into your dreams. As my eyes were fighting to stay open and my mind tired from seeing all those versions of Waleuska come alive before me, I thanked the universe and life for 51 wonderful years. Thank you for the laughter, the joy, the protection, the blessings, the tears, the loss, the hurt, the sickness. I take it all. And with that gratitude prayer, I close my eyes to sleep in full trust and love for what awaits me, knowing that the best is yet to come.